Welcome to more Old Testament. This is me, Jabra, again, and we are ending this parasha, Yisra, and he left Jacob, about Jacob leaving. So now he's going back, and we're starting a new part of the book of Genesis called Vayishlach, and I'll tell you the meaning of that tomorrow, so stay tuned. But in chapter, where we left it now, in the last segment, was Jacob leaving, having a covenant with Laban that he will take care of his daughters, that he will protect them. And I'm sure Laban was also, knowing the history between Jacob and Esau, he was worried about what will happen to his daughters. So that's why he was having Jacob make this covenant to do everything he can to protect his daughters and not marry more women, etc. So now they are in Edom, and so Jacob, we know the history between Jacob and Esau. Jacob took Esau's barakah and bikurah. He took his blessing and he took his birthright. So understandably, there is a lot of bad blood, probably, at least that's what Jacob's thinking, between them, and there is no trust. At least that's what Jacob's thinking as well. So he sends a message with his servant to Esau, and the message reveals the strategy that Jacob is using. Very carefully, he says to them, tell Esau that your servant Jacob, so not a servant, he's acknowledging Esau's kind of birthright, that he's his older brother. He's assuming that their father has died, and Esau has inherited all of it, everything. And so he calls himself a servant to Esau. He tells him, I was staying with Laban. Now this is significant. He's telling him, I wasn't hiding away from you. I wasn't hiding. You could have always found me. You could have asked our mother and she would have told you. So I wasn't hiding away from you. And I've been delayed. And then he tells him, I have all of this fortune. I have these sheep, these cows. I have a great fortune. So, meaning to tell him, I'm not here coming after any of your inheritance. I'm not coming here to take what you've inherited from our father. And then I've sent to tell my master, my lord, that I might find favor in your eyes. So let's leave the past behind us and turn a new leaf in our relationship. So they go, the messengers, and they come back and they say, your brother Esau has come out with 400 of his men. Now this scares Jacob. Now notice the number 400, that's a sacred number. So they're going out maybe to receive or maybe to fight. We don't know yet. And Jacob is scared. So he starts his war strategy. He divides his camp. Not that he's going to war against his brother, but it's sort of a defensive strategy. He divides the two camps first, and he says if Esau destroys one camp, the other camp will survive and will be able to save some of the fortune. And then he prays to the father of his grandfather Abraham and the God of his father Isaac. And so he prays, he asks for deliverance for him and his family, and he reminds the Lord of his covenant with him to preserve him and to give him endless posterity, basically. Then he sends these gifts to his brother. Now this is a sort of, again, another defensive strategy, because usually in Bedouin tribes, when people go out to war with you, they are hoping to loot, to have a reward from the camps that they invade. So when he sends his fortune to Esau, he's hoping that Esau will be able to pay the mercenaries or whoever is with him and compensate the warriors, so the warriors will not have a motivation or as much of a motivation to destroy and loot the camps that they will see. And he makes sure that his servants tell him that this is my fortune and this is a gift. This is a gift to Esau. So he's sending all of these things to sort of appease Esau, but also it's a defensive strategy to make sure that the people with Esau will see this fortune and they will sort of hold back. Then we have this event. They camp, and Jacob sees this person, an angel of the Lord or a person from the Lord, and in some interpretations the Lord himself, and they have this struggle, and Jacob prevails against the angel of the Lord. And in the struggle, Jacob injures his leg, and but he's taking hold of this personage, and he says, "I want you to bless me," and that's where Jacob is no longer Jacob. Jacob is now called Yisra-El. Now, the name Israel, I know President Nelson has started this whole thing about the name in the church. It's this message about let God prevail. And yes, this name Yisra in Arabic and Semitic roots means to prevail. It's related more to like a boxing or a wrestling match where you wrestle someone and win. Yisra means to prevail, to pin someone down, and El is the name for Elohim, so God prevail. And because ancient Hebrew, we're never sure, because of so many things with the language, we can't really tell if it's let God prevail or he who prevails on God. But here is also this thing, because of the nature of Hebrew, the word ish in Hebrew means man, Ra means to see, El means Elohim, so it can be interpreted as the man who saw or who sees God. And we know that this whole thing about seeing someone's face, it started with Laban, is prevalent in this segment. And there is all kinds of interpretations of the name, but I prefer the one about I prefer the one that's basically Israel, he who sees God, rather than he who prevails. I don't know. I don't want to argue with President Nelson about this. He's a prophet. He knows better. But that's the nature of the language. And he gets us, and they call this place Penuel, and it relates to the Hebrew root Pana, El, he who sees God. Again, you see this theme of seeing. It's who sees the face of God. Pana, Panim is face in Hebrew. It's a root that doesn't repeat a lot in Semitic. It's specifically Hebrew, so that's what it means, face of God, and that's why the place is called that. Now, let me point something else before I continue here, and I was probably supposed to start this segment with it. Now, there is something called a chiasm in here. It's a chiasmic structure, and in our church, intellectuals like to talk about chiasms a lot. So a chiasm is when you start something and you say, for example, Jabra reads books. Books are wonderful. Books give knowledge, and then you reverse the order and you say, knowledge is great, that's why Jabra loves books, and you go to the beginning, which is Jabra loves to read. And there is a similar structure going on in this segment, where we started with Jacob leaving Beersheba. He goes to this valley, he sees God, he makes his covenant, he erects a stone. Then he goes, he stays with Laban. Then he has all of these children. We saw that Joseph is born, and that's a turning point in this chiasmic structure, where now Jacob leaves Laban. He makes a covenant with Laban. He's now heading, and the story started, really the top of the story is when he had a struggle with Esau and he left because of Esau. So now he has this, covenant with Laban. He heads, and now he's having another struggle with Esau, and then there will be a reconciliation with Esau. So the chiasm is just moving back to sort of the beginning. And again, this is, as I said in the previous segment, the book of Genesis, because of the oral culture of the of the time of the Old Testament, people put these structures and these mnemonics in the stories so that people could remember them and recall the order of events. As I hope you would now that I brought your attention to it, if it's the first time I'm bringing your attention to it. So this is what we're happening here. So now, similar to Bethel in the beginning, there is this other place where Jacob is seeing, God or an angel of God, and he's making a covenant, and he's getting a blessing, and the sign of the blessing is him getting a new name. Then chapter 33 starts with, again, the theme of seeing. He lifts up his eyes and he sees Esau coming in with his 400. Now, in the previous segment, I talked about this, alluded to this part, and it shows you the hierarchy and Jacob's, or now Jacob or Israel's. Now we'll call him Israel. That he's been called Israel, we'll call him Israel. Israel's preference, where his family stands. I don't think any parent should have preferences of who he loves, and definitely if you have multiple wives, you shouldn't have such a feeling. But I think it's human nature. Again, the scriptures, if we just read them, they are showing us the prophets and the fathers as humans with natural feelings that all of us have. So he spreads his camp. Now he spreads his camp in five. Again, it's a defensive strategy. The way they call it kar far in Arabic, I don't know if there is a name for it, but you attack, you withdraw. So now he's thinking that Esau is coming to attack him. So sort of to wear down the attacking party, you spread your camp. You divide your camp so that, let's say, the first party is destroyed, then the attacking company has to sort of regroup and resupply and do all the preparations to attack the second party. So at the time they hopefully go through 2 or 3 parties, they'll be worn down, and this way you're preserving your best, the family that you want to keep to the last. And that's what Jacob does. So first of all, he divides the children, divides the wives, and on Leah and Rachel and the two, and Zilpah and Bilhah. And then he puts Zilpah and Bilhah in front, and he makes their camp go first to meet Esau. And then Leah and her children. So Leah is sort of his second preferred option. He doesn't want her destroyed in the first 2 parties. And then he kept Rachel and Joseph to the end. And in verse 3 in chapter 33, it says, he was ahead. So notice he's not ahead of the other parties, but he's sort of, with the last party, Rachel and Joseph, he's putting himself in front of, or between Rachel and Joseph and Esau, to protect them, so that if Esau wants his revenge, Rachel and Joseph won't die, because at that point, if everyone else has been destroyed or taken, at least he will have a posterity in Joseph surviving. And then he does this royal salute. He approaches Esau and he kneels 7 times until he approaches his brother. And while he's doing this very slowly, Esau now is very emotional, and he comes and he embraces him, and they are kissing and they are crying, and he asks about his nephews, and they all come, and they are addressing him as our Lord, and he insists that his brother Esau take his present. Now in Arabic we have a proverb translates literally. I don't have an idiomatic translation coming to mind right now, but it's feed the mouth and the eye will become shy. Meaning, if I give you a gift and if I feed you well and if I do nice things to you, then you will not harm me. You will not do stuff to me. And that's why Jacob or Israel is insisting now that Esau take the presents, because he knows that if Esau takes the presents, he's definitely not going to harm him. This is the rule of the Bedouins. This is the rule of the culture in the Middle East to this day. So, and again, he tells him that he sees his face, and it's like seeing the face of God. Again, notice this seeing the face is a theme that's repeating here. And Esau wants to meet him later, and Jacob promises him, but Jacob leaves to Sukkot, and he stays there, by the people of Hamor, and he builds an altar, and he starts worshiping in the name of El Shaddai, the God of Israel. Now, this is where we have a very important event, chapter 34, the rape of Dinah. I'll speak about it in the following segment, but that's where things stand with Jacob. He never sees Esau again, at least that's what we have here. I think Jacob never trusted that Esau will forgive him or have forgiven him. Esau will come in briefly later on, but for now, that's where it stands. And thank you for listening.